found some of the discourse around Michael Penix Jr. really interesting over the last few days, because there seems to be this huge reaction to the Texas game, and a whole bunch of people who weren't talking about him before are now talking about him, which is, I suppose, is understandable when you have a game that's been watched all over the world and you basically have a flawless performance. People are going to get very excited and they're going to want to talk about that player. But here's the thing that I have trouble with. I am seeing people who I really respect, people like John Middlecoff, who have been scouts in the league and do a fantastic job analysing football, and their YouTube channel. Go and check out John's channel. It is amazing for football analysis. But people like that suddenly going, well, Michael Penix Jr. is the second overall pick off the back of the Texas game. If you are making that point through some of the struggles during the college football season and you are consistent with it now, that to me is fair play. But you can't not document that opinion during the struggles and explain the struggles and then come back after a flawless game against Texas, who played like crap, quite frankly, and then say second overall pick. What are people doing here? Why is nobody talking about him in that range? Now the thing is, as soon as you start a video off like I have here, talking about Michael Penix in any other way other than he is the best thing ever, or he's going to be second overall pick, people think you're being negative, especially because I write Seahawks Draft Blog, talk a lot about the Seahawks. He's a Washington Husky. Unless you are just going to be 100% gushing praise on Michael Penix Jr., you set yourself up to get pushback and criticism and people complaining about it. I really like Michael Penix Jr. Let's just make that clear. I've been saying since last year, let alone this season, that his arm talent is as good as any that I've seen, and I've been doing this blog since 2008. There's basically Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen who have had better arm talent than Michael Penix Jr. coming out. That's great company to have. You cannot complain about his arm. I've seen him live. I've been in the Washington facility. I know what an amazing athlete he is. He can do a 38-inch vertical, for God's sake. People complain about, like, oh, his lower body's not that big and stuff like that, and then maybe susceptible to injuries. The guy can jump a 38-inch vertical. That's basically Nick Chubb level vertical. That is explosive defensive lineman level, traits. It's unbelievable. It's a fantastic athlete. He's got an amazing arm. Everybody speaks highly of him at Washington. You could easily justify, based on the physical tools, that he could be a top 10 pick. There's absolutely no reason not to sort of have that opinion based on the physical traits. There is another side to it, though. And this is the stuff that I don't think we're hearing enough at the moment. And I just want to bring this context to the table, having already established that I really like Michael Penix Jr. So don't just listen to this bit and go, you're a hater. I've just said how much I like Michael Penix and how justified you would be in taking him very, very early in a quarterback league and taking a chance on his traits working out and him being a really good player. I have no problem with that. But here's the thing. He started this season throwing 74.9% completions in his first 5 games, which were really easy games against crappy opponents like Michigan State. But then he went on an 8-game run where he faced a little bit more pressure, where the conditions were not great, and he went on an 8-game run where that completion percentage dropped from 74.9% to 60.1%. That is a considerable drop. That's a 15% drop in completion rate. Now, people will go, well, okay, maybe he was banged up and injured. And I've seen this argument so many times that he was injured, that he was carrying an injury. The guy was still throwing it downfield as well as he was at the start of the year. Like, if he was had ribs injuries or an arm injury or something like this that was which was highly impacting his accuracy to the tune of 15%, he still wouldn't be throwing 50, 60-yard bombs downfield. And that's the point. During these same splits, the 5 games where his completion percentage was about 75%, and the next 8 where it was 60%, he was still throwing 2.6 big-time throws per game. So that number never changed throughout the whole 13 games. It was the same consistently, 2.6 big-time throws per game. The only difference was there were 15% more incompletions. Now, I've watched every game. Not because I'm a Husky fan, just because I've studied the quarterbacks and want to make sure that I've watched all of the games. I've seen all of the games. Now, the issue wasn't an injury. The issue was simply that he was taking, for whatever reason, a lot of shots downfield, and there were a lot of throws that were kind of just thrown to areas rather than with precision and accuracy. It was almost a case of every time I see Rome Odunze one-on-one, I'm going to throw it downfield. And if he can run underneath it, because Rome Odunze, again, I've been in the facility. I know what the people think at Washington. They reckon he can run a 4.3. He's an unbelievable receiver, top 10 pick, great body control, ball tracking amazing, great hands, great everything, the complete package. You're going to see him 1v1, you're going to throw it downfield. If he runs underneath it, massive play. If he doesn't run underneath it, no defender's getting there either. It's kind of a shot to nothing. But there were almost too many of those. And that's part of the issue that I have when trying to get a complete big picture review on Michael Penix. That's not going to work at the next level. You're not going to be able to just sort of throw it downfield loads and loads and loads of times and say, okay, well, 3 of those times works. Great, we've won the football game. It's going to take a little bit more than that. You are going to have to build drives. You're going to have to throw on the intermediate level. You're going to have to throw layered passes across the middle. You are going to have to do a little bit more of the game management style of it. And then the big arm, the throws downfield have got to be shots timed at the right opportunity against the right kind of coverage. And you're not going to be throwing against overmatched defensive backs against Rome Odunze all the time. So you're going to have to be wary of that. Safeties are going to act a little bit differently. Coverages are going to be a lot bit more complex for you. It's just going to be a complete change. Now, that's just something that has to be acknowledged. It wasn't the only reason why his completion percentage went down 15%. There were some inaccurate throws. There were some misses. I personally think he's thrown too many interceptions in the last 2 years. There's been some ugly ones that you'd rather have back. But then a lot of quarterbacks do that. You can pretty much go through all of the top quarterbacks, Drake May, Kellen Williams, Quinn Ewers. They've all had somewhat ugly interceptions this year. It happens. It happens to young quarterbacks. That's not a big issue for Michael Penix. But I'm just saying that the performance for a good 8 games there wasn't that amazing. And it backs up with a PFF grade. He started the season well, 89.9 PFF grade, and then it dropped for the last few games to 71.6. That's nearly a 20-point drop in PFF grade. Whatever you think of PFF, it highlights that he wasn't playing as well. And then the other thing you've got to remember here is his offensive line was, it's unbelievable. I mean, he wasn't pressured. They've won the Joe Moore Award for best blocking offensive line. It's the award that Michigan's offensive line won the previous 2 years. They have got a top 20 pick as a tackle who's going to convert to guard. Still a great college tackle. Their right tackle is going to be a second-round pick. The center, everybody loves the center within the NFL and in college football. Washington gave up 0.8 sacks a game, less than a sack a game last season. The only teams who had a better record were Oregon, remember that for Bo Nix, 0.4 sacks a game, and Liberty, 0.6. To compare that, South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, and Alabama, of all teams, had the joint 8th worst lines for sacks per game at 3.7. So you see there that he hasn't faced as much pressure. He's played behind a fantastic offensive line with amazing weapons. And they've got a running back who's played very, very well. And even defensively, people like Braylon Trice, fantastic player. For me, a top 50, surefire top 50 pick. So his performance regressed a little bit. The big arm and the fact he was getting 2.6 big throws per game was helping, but so was the fact that they could call on a Rome Odunze and the running back and the defense. When I saw him live in the Apple Cup, that wasn't a Michael Penix game. It was very close. Defense made stops when they needed to. Rome Odunze on the trick play was very good coaching, good scheming. So, you just have to take these things into account. Like Kalen DeBoer might be the best coach in college football. They're talking about him going to Michigan. Like if Jim Harbaugh leaves, which seems increasingly likely. I think he'll probably stay at Washington. I'm actually looking at the guy and thinking, I wouldn't be that against him joining the Seahawks, quite frankly. I don't know if he's got any ambitions to be in the NFL. The guy is clearly special when it comes to coaching and the job that he's done. You look wherever he's been, the offense has been amazing. Indiana, Fresno State, smaller school. The guy has had just winning success. What if they won something like 21, 22 games in a row? It's Washington. It's not Alabama. It's not Georgia. This is Washington. The guy knows his stuff. So the complete environment for Michael Penix, coaching, support staff, offensive line, a defense that does a good job up front, it's all worked in his favor. So that's the context that we're not hearing right now. So remember what I said at the start. amazing arm, amazing physical tools, great athleticism, character that is there's no issues there whatsoever. But let's also acknowledge the situation and the environment that he's played in. I also accept, to counter my own point, that you still need to, the quarterbacks that elevate their teams to achieve great things in college football, and we've seen a lot of them do it over the years, and they get drafted very highly, and rightly so. And Michael Penix taking Washington to a national championship deserves to give his stock a major boost, and it will do. And I think, based on what he showed this season with that 8 games, it wasn't so much a slump. It's just the play wasn't quite as good as the start of the season, and the injury history and everything like that. I thought he was going to go in the second round. And I think the fact, if they were to win the national championship next week, I think there's no doubt he will go in the first round. The only thing that will stop that is like a major injury issue. Now, he has had, I think, 2 serious ACL injuries. I think he's had something like 4 season-ending injuries. These are things that are going to have to be checked out the combine, and they can't just be brushed off. These are things, teams are going to think about this, but there's also a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. So the fact that he has the traits, the character, the production, the success, he's going to go in the first round, I think, as long as the injury situation is okay. But the point of this video is just to push back a little bit on my OMG. You should be like the second overall pick right now. Like this has been a progression for him. And the other thing that needs to be mentioned here is, I wasn't aware of this, but like left-handed quarterbacks, like people have been showing the video, like look what he looks right-handed. It's not about the technique. You do have to change your whole offense around the fact you've got a left-handed passer. That will not be for everybody. We have to remember this. It's not just about blocking either. It's not just about your left tackle now essentially becomes the right tackle, and your right tackle's the blind side blocker. The receivers have to adjust to this. I didn't even know this. Somebody told me this a few weeks ago. Like, no, it's a really big change. Like, some teams are not going to want to do that. This was what somebody told me. And your receivers have to adjust to everything, and the way that they catch the ball, the way they're looking for the football, the route adjustments and everything, all has to be different. So there are going to be some teams that perhaps are interested, but there are going to be some teams who think, okay, whatever, we need a quarterback. He's left-handed, so what? We're going to change it. And Miami did that with Tua Tagovailoa. They drafted him in the top 5. And this is the thing, though. This is why he could go very early, and I understand this argument, and I appreciate this argument. I mean, Tua was younger. Tua had much more hype. There was no, there was tank for Tua. There was no meltdown for Michael or anything like that. Tua was a very, very big name within college football. I personally was never a big fan. I thought there was, physical limitations there that didn't warrant putting him ahead of Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, but he went in between those 2 players and went 5th overall to Miami. He was drafted 5th overall with a major hip injury, which he was injured at the time. It wasn't that he'd had it in the past like Pennix. He had a major hip injury, and he was left-handed, and he still went 5th overall. Now, I do think there is some crossover between Pennix and Tua. I think they are quite similar players, just that Pennix has got a better arm, and maybe Tua's a bit better on the intermediate stuff. I think maybe Tua, you could fit into the McDaniels system, and he will essentially do what he's asked for the most part. Whether Penix can work within that sort of structure, or whether he has to be just more of a big play threat, I'm not sure. But I do think there are some similarities between the two, but Penix has got a better arm. But he's older. He has got the injury history, which teams will look at. I think a lot of teams would have been scared off Tua. The old adage is it only takes one team, and that will be the case with Michael Penix Jr. as well. Do I think he's going to go 2nd overall? No. I think Caleb Williams is the lock to go 1st overall. I've felt that all along. I do think there's a decent chance that Jaden Daniels will go 2nd overall. His deep ball throwing is very, very good arm, scrambles very, very well. People like to sort of, dismiss the Heisman a little bit. Look, he had an amazing season, and like, he's elevated his play so much and just looks like a star. And the fact that Lamar Jackson might be about to win the MVP and take his team to the Super Bowl will also impact teams as well, because it's a copycat league. And then I think Drake May, it's just very easy to project Drake May to the next level. I think he takes too many chances. There are some throws that have come off in college that will not come off at the next level, that people get a bit silly about. But he has got a big arm. He's got big stature. He can move around for his size, good character. So he is going to go very early. If right now, I'd probably say Michael Penix may well be the fourth quarterback. And look, I really like Spencer Rattler. And if Rattler can have a great offseason, great Senior Bowl, I think he can get his stock back on track. I think Rattler could be a great pick for somebody. And if he's going to be available in the middle rounds, what a bargain. But right now, I would say Michael Penix, fourth quarterback off the board, and we'll probably go in the first round. And I think that's perfectly fine. That's not hating. That's no negative. I think that's very much a positive. I also think that's an accurate assessment of where we are with Michael Penix Jr. I just think we have to also acknowledge what happened during the season, why it happened. Things were not plain sailing for him, despite the wins, despite everything else. You also acknowledge the positives, both physically and the results that he's had at Washington, what he's capable of, and it all amounts to a player who's probably going to go in the first round. But I just think we need to just calm down a little bit about he should be the second overall pick and stuff like that. This is going to be a debated player all the way through this draft season, and I would just encourage everybody to have that debate and not resort to, fighting, because I can just feel it. The Seahawks fans in particular, especially Seahawks Twitter, they freaking love to pair off into teams. And you either, I can just imagine it now, you either have to be all in on Michael Penix and the Seahawks should trade up for the guy and you have to love him, or if you have any kind of slight pushback on that, oh, you hate Penix, you're wrong, and God, it happens all the time. And I really don't want that. I think the report that I put on Seahawks Draft Blog is about as good a review as you will find on the player, and it looks at both sides of it. So go and check it out. SeahawksDraftBlog.com. If you Google Michael Penix Jr., SeahawksDraftBlog.com, you will probably find the article as well. Give it a read. It's a long read. It's 3,500 words. I promise it's not too heavy. You'll get through it. But I think there's the pros, the cons, and a balanced view of these things, of this assessment of this player, who I think will be a first-round pick unless, has a terrible injury against Michigan or something like that, or a meltdown performance. I think he is going to be a first-round pick. That there's reasons to justify that, reasons to justify him going very, very early if he does go that early. But there's also some other things that we have to consider, which may mean that he goes a little bit later than something. I think he may well be there for the Seahawks if they want him, depending on what happens in, this week against Arizona, what happens to Green Bay, whether the Seahawks get to the playoffs. I think he may well be there for them if they want him. So it will be interesting to see how this all plays out. And I'm very interested to see what happens in that national championship game, because if Washington can throw the ball against Michigan early and can get ahead in the game, I struggle to see how Michigan, unless Michigan controls it with their running game, it's going to be hard to see how they, put up much of a fight here. And they struggled against TCU in the playoffs last year when they were a big throwing team, get the ball downfield. So I'm leaning Washington for that national championship game and think they could win. And if they do, we're going to hear even more about Michael Penix. But like I say, check out the article. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Make sure you subscribe, give the video a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.